Somewhere, right now, a dentist is sliding an X-ray onto a glowing screen. He is looking at a row of small, dark shadows hidden between your teeth. Decay. Quiet, slow, ordinary decay. The kind almost every modern person carries without thinking twice. Now here is the part that should stop you cold. For most of the time human beings have existed on this planet, that shadow was not there. Your cavities are not an accident of bad luck. They are not simply the price of having teeth. They are a signature, a mark left behind by something specific that happened to the human diet. And the people who came before you did not carry it. When archaeologists lift ancient skulls out of the ground, skulls tens of thousands of years old, they keep finding the same strange thing. Rows of teeth, worn down with age, but clean, whole, almost entirely free of the rot we now consider normal. So what changed? What did your ancestors know that you don't? The honest answer is that they did not know anything. They were not brushing. They had no floss, no toothpaste, no dentist, no fluoride in the water. By every modern measure of dental hygiene, they should have had mouths full of decay. And yet, they did not. Which means the cavity, the most common chronic disease on Earth, is not really a hygiene problem at all. It is something else. To understand it, you have to look at the single event that broke the human mouth. It was not the invention of candy. It was not the invention of the toothbrush. It was the invention of the farm. For more than 99% of human history, your ancestors ate the way the body was designed to be fed. Meat, fish, roots, leaves, nuts, the occasional burst of wild fruit or honey. These foods were tough, fibrous, and low in the kind of soft, sticky, fermentable carbohydrate that feeds the bacteria living in your mouth. Then, around 10,000 years ago, humans began to farm grain. And for the first time, our species started flooding the mouth with a steady river of starch. The consequences were written directly onto our teeth, and modern science has now read them. In a remarkable study, a scientist named Christina Adler, working with a research team led by Alan Cooper, did something clever. They examined the hardened plaque, the calcified gunk, fossilized onto ancient human teeth across thousands of years. Locked inside that plaque was DNA, a frozen record of the bacteria that had once lived in those mouths. By reading it, they could reconstruct the human oral microbiome through time like rings inside a tree. What they found were two great collapses in the health of the human mouth. The first happened when humans began farming. As grain entered the diet, the gentle, diverse community of bacteria in the mouth shifted, and species that thrive on starch and cause decay began to take over. Then a second, sharper collapse came much later, during the Industrial Revolution, when refined sugar and white flour became cheap enough for everyone. At that point, the modern mouth was born, dominated by a handful of acid-producing bacteria, and tooth decay exploded into the epidemic we live with today. Do you see what that means? The bacteria that rot your teeth were not winning for most of human history. We fed them. We invited them in. But here is where the story takes a stranger turn, one that proves it was never about brushing at all. In a cave in Morocco called Taforalt, a team of scientists, including the researcher Louise Humphrey, uncovered the remains of hunter-gatherers who lived around 15,000 years ago. These people had no agriculture, no farms, no grain fields, no bakeries. By the simple story, their teeth should have been pristine. Instead, their mouths were riddled with cavities, some of the worst decay ever found in ancient humans. How is that possible? What had they done? They had discovered wild acorns along with other starchy wild plants, and they were eating them in enormous quantities, gathering and storing them as a staple food. The acorns were sweet, starchy, and sticky, and the moment those ancient foragers began feeding their mouths a constant supply of fermentable carbohydrate, the decay arrived, thousands of years before farming was ever invented. The lesson is brutal and simple. The cavity was never about whether you owned a toothbrush. It was always about what you chose to feed the bacteria. This is the truth that the modern dental industry rarely puts front and center. You have been taught that decay is mainly a failure of cleaning. Scrub harder, floss more, and you can hold it back. But your ancestors, who never cleaned at all, walked around with healthier teeth than you, while ancient people who simply ate too much wild starch developed cavities anyway. Cleaning matters, but it has never been the root of the problem. The root is the food. One man spent his life chasing exactly this idea, and what he saw still unsettles people today. In the 1930s, a dentist named Weston Price grew suspicious. He watched the mouths of his own patients filling with decay and crooked, crowded teeth, and he wanted to know whether it had always been this way. So he traveled the world. He went to isolated communities in remote mountains, on far-off islands, in deep valleys, places where people still ate the traditional foods of their ancestors, untouched by modern shipping and modern shops. What he documented became famous. In community after community, he found people with strong, broad jaws, straight teeth, and remarkably little decay, despite the fact that not one of them had ever seen a dentist or owned a toothbrush. Then he found the contrast that haunted him. When those same isolated communities gained access to the new foods of the modern world, the white flour, the sugar, the canned and processed goods, the change came fast. Within a single generation, children began growing narrower faces, crowded teeth, and the same decay he had seen back home. The food had arrived, and the rot had followed it in. Now, the picture is not quite as simple as never. A handful of ancient peoples, like those acorn eaters, did get cavities. Some of Price's broader theories went further than the evidence could fully support. But the central pattern he saw has held up across a century of bioarchaeology. For most of human history, on a diet of whole, unprocessed food, severe tooth decay was rare. It became normal only when the diet changed. So think about what is happening inside your own mouth right now. There is a bacterium living there called Streptococcus mutans. It is, in a sense, a creature perfectly adapted to the modern world. Every time you eat refined sugar or soft, processed starch, you hand it a feast. It consumes that sugar and excretes acid, and that acid is what slowly dissolves the enamel of your teeth. Your mouth is running on ancient software, a system built for a world of tough roots and wild meat, and you have flooded it with a kind of fuel it was never designed to handle. Your ancestors were not stronger than you. Their teeth were not made of better material. They simply lived before the flood. They ate food that did not feed the rot, and so the rot never came. If you want to step back out of that flood and feed your body and your mouth the way the human animal was actually built to be fed, that is exactly what the ancestral kitchen Bible was made for. It is filled with over 100 clean, whole, historical recipes. Real food without the refined sugar and processed flour that quietly rewired the human mouth in the first place. You can claim your copy through the link in the description right now. And if you use the code 2026 at checkout, you will receive an exclusive 50% discount. Because the shadow on that dental X-ray was never your destiny. It was never simply the cost of being human. It was the cost of a diet that arrived only a heartbeat ago in the long story of our species. And the moment you stop feeding the rot, you step back into the same quiet, clean inheritance your ancestors carried in their mouths for 100,000 years.